the trans movement, and he tried to pin it on the Nazis. And you look at who he was talking about.
He was Andrew Tate, actually. He'd fuck one.
He was being really clever with it. He was trying to say that his name is Hirschfeld, I think, Magnus Hirschfeld, who created the sex reform back in the 30s, and he was German, and so he tried to make the tweet insinuating that it was Nazis and it was Germans. But you actually look into it, and Hirschfeld was a specific religion, a specific group of people, but he leaves that out for reasons that you can kind of understand when you look at who he works for, when you look at who's in charge, and maybe who told him why he should talk about that. You look at Jordan Peterson and why he avoids that question, why he says that they have a really high IQ and why we shouldn't talk about that.
He says Judeo-Christianity. It's like you got to pick up the sword and fight the dragon. The guy always cries like a fucking homosexual. Jordan Peterson is a psyop, and he never once answered the JQ, but he went live, his first time live, and someone said, hey, answer the JQ, and he knew what it was. So he said, answer the Jewish question? Well, that's a hell of a question. And that commenter came back after the live stream was over, and he typed, it had so many upvotes. This kid's so brilliant. He's probably 16-year-old Nazi. I love this kid. But he wrote this. Why is it a hell of a question? Because you talk about all groups of people. Why is that a hell of a question? Total psyop. Fuck that guy.
Well, okay. All of them they avoided. Alex Jones has notoriously avoided his whole career. And then you look at why. You look at why Kanye West kind of broke it down by finally being probably the biggest person to ever speak about it. And then Destiny's over here, and he says that this is a crazy conspiracy theorist, like that we're crazy for talking about it. He thinks that it's wild, that they'll say words like you're a Nazi, that you're anti-Semitic. I mean, they've written articles about me. It was part of the reason that I got banned for platforming Nick back on the YouTube days. But then you look at the stuff that Destiny promotes, for example, and you look at his ideology, right? Socialist, you look at who was the biggest Democratic socialist.
What? I'm a socialist?
I mean, you're leftist, and so you kind of like.
Bro, I don't think you know what socialism means. Can you stick to like what's in your dictionary?
He's a market tard. He's literally a capitalist.
Okay, hold on. Let Sneako finish his thing, and then we'll turn it.
Okay, well, leftist ideology. Communism was created by Karl Marx, and the biggest democratic socialist is Bernie Sanders. The right things that transgenderism, you think that women could turn into men. That's also created by Magnus Hirschfeld. You look at like everything that you stand for. It's all. If you look at the vaccine, for example, you look at who created that. Who's Peter Hotez, who's afraid to have a debate with Joe Rogan.
He created the vaccine.
Well, he's been the biggest one shilling it on children.
Oh, okay. Because you said created it, and now you're just saying it promoted it.
Creating it and making it.
I pointed out as a thing for this conversation. These words are always mixed up because nobody has anything of value to say about this topic.
I didn't say created. I said the one that pushing it on the kids. And you look.
You said created, then look at people like Peter.
Sure, I correct myself.
After the Washington Post and all those news agencies and think tanks, they all released an amnesty and apologized about the vaccine. Are you going to apologize for promoting it?
The funniest thing about the vaccine topic, and nobody will admit it, which I predicted 2 years ago, is every single thing that was complained about to be a conspiracy about the vaccine, none of it came true. Vaccine passports aren't permanent. Governments didn't permanently expand.
Talk about injuries.
Governments didn't permanently expand their powers. There were not mass deaths. There wasn't a mass forced vaccination program. There weren't mass side effects.
Then why would they say I'm sorry? Why would Washington Post release an amnesty? Why?
Zherka, I don't deal in headlines. If you want to talk about a substantive article, go for it. But I don't care what headline you've read on Twitter.
You don't like headlines?
Which is the extent to what you do for research, right?
Yeah, so let me get this straight. All these guys apologize.
Let Destiny finish this point. And I don't want to spend too much time on the vax because we have the other topic.
Sure, we can go. But I'm saying the vaccine topic is the perfect topic because notice how much the goalposts have moved. When that thing first came out, we were going to turn into magnets. Fucking Bill Gates was going to microchip us into being gay. We were going to get fucking killed. There were going to be mass fucking heart problems. All this shit. None of it came true. None of it came true. All the vaccine passports. Bro, how long have you been fucking roids,
during COVID?
Dude, you had a heart issue before COVID even happened. I've watched your streams. Why are you trying to lie right in front of me?
No, I didn't say what about my heart. I said what about my conspiracy that they're going to plunge everyone into debt as all monopolies triple their fucking net worth, and that's what fucking happened. Every mom and pop shop closed. McDonald's tripled their net worth, and you pretending you didn't see any.
Do you need a conspiracy to explain why big business gets bigger and mom and pop shops die?
So
do you not understand anything about the fucking economy? So why do you think a big business is a big business?
Exactly, that's my point. Isn't it shady to you?
What? No, what's shady about a larger business staying in business and a smaller business going into business? What's the shady part?
Hold on. You want to know what's shady about that? That's just unbelievable. Go ahead, Nick. Because the government literally made deals that some businesses could stay open and some were forced to stay closed. That's what's shady about it. Like, for example, they said that Walmart and Walgreens could stay open and small businesses had to shut down.
No, they didn't.
They absolutely
You're just lying.
Go back and Google it.
I don't need to go back. Okay, yeah, absolutely. You can Google at home if you want to, but if the supermarket
where Trump goes out there and says that Walmart can stay open. Some businesses were allowed to stay open and some had to stay closed.
What was so that viewers at home can look it up? So what's like a city or state where you're telling me let's be clear about your claim. There are some states or cities where Walmart was allowed to stay open, but other supermarkets or other stores, not a church, not a recreational gathering.
Okay. Yes, 100%. And if you go and look it up,
so
absolutely. And not only that, but not only that, but also as large as wealth transfer because they printed $6 trillion and then they spent $3 trillion. They doubled the money supply in 1 year, and then it was the largest deficit the United States has ever run. Where do you think that money goes? Where do you think that money goes to? The cash transfer in COVID, the $2,500 check or whatever, $1,000 check, I forget what it was. That cash transfer, which I think
it was immigrant check.
Yeah, right. In spring of 2020, that was a $250 billion part of a $3 trillion spending bill. All that other money went to the airlines. It went to all the big companies that had to be bailed out. And when you talk about quantitative easing,
do you know anything about finance? No company got bailed out. There was the
Are you kidding
There
me?
was the PPP. There was a Paycheck Protection Program, which is where you paid a company that was to compensate them for W-2 wages that were holding employees.
The airlines didn't get bailed out.
People got money to maintain.
The airlines didn't get bailed out.
Airlines are one of the least profitable businesses in the entire fucking United States.
So the airlines got bailed out.
Okay, go over it.
There you go. Okay.
There were massive, the largest government programs. The largest government programs. You go, I took a fucking PPP loan. Do you know anything about finance? The PPP loan and a lot of the bailouts you talk about were available for any company to go in and reach for. Okay, that's the reality. There weren't favorable companies. You're just wrong.
Like the
just like the Walmart and supermarket thing.
Industry.
You're just making shit up.
You're just making shit up. And quantitative easing doesn't benefit the banks and doesn't benefit the biggest corporations. Also,
every single form of monetary policy benefits the wealthy people. That's how it works.
Also,
do you acknowledge that tax cuts benefit the wealthy?
Tax cuts benefit everybody sometimes.
No, hold on.
The QE benefits. I saw you tweeted about the Trump tax cuts.
The QE benefited everybody,
You want to talk about the Trump tax cuts?
Does more liquidity in a market benefit everybody looking for money?
So you're admitting now that tax cuts benefit everybody?
No, I'm saying the tax cuts disproportionately benefit the wealthy. Just like the bailouts also benefit everybody.
Just like you acknowledge.
Oh, dude.
All right.
I mean, it's just international travel and airlines.
It's like there's a basic.
We went into COVID.
Destiny shifted the goalposts before he even finished.
No one is shifting a goalpost. I don't even know if you can see where the goalposts are.
The whole thing was about JQ, and then you immediately started talking about airlines.
The only one who should have been bailed out was Mohammed Atta. He was a good guy.
All right.
Let's talk about the Jews now.
Real quick. Yeah. So this is what we're going to do, guys. I'm going to moderate this thing. I'm not going to be participating. I'm just going to moderate. This is mainly between Nick and Destiny. We're going to talk about the JQ, the thing that everyone else is scared of. I think Sneako did a great preamble there talking about everyone is scared to talk about this, but we will talk about it. So I'm going to turn it to Destiny first. What's your stance on the situation, Destiny? And then we can just have Nick go off of that.
Sure. My issue is certain groups of people will act in certain ways, and people will take those behaviors and they'll try to use that in some really weird way to explain every single thing that's going on in the world. Sometimes people, so for instance, they'll say, oh, well, these people are disproportionately represented in some area, which for Jewish people, which for all people are true, right? You call a guy for help on your PC, probably going to talk to an Indian more likely than, a Chinese person. Or if you go to a person in the Midwest and ask somebody to roof your house, you're probably going to get a Hispanic person rather than a white person, right? There are definitely people that tend to move towards certain areas, which happens for a variety of reasons. Where IQ might be one of those reasons for a variety of reasons. But the problem is people will take these trends that they see, and then from there they extrapolate these crazy ideas that somehow every single world government, financial institution, educational institution, private firm are all working for some shadowy group of people, when in reality, every single behavior you see can be explained really simply.
It's not shadowy.
Hold on. Let Destiny finish his point completely before anyone says anything.
Every single behavior that you see can be explained by ordinary human behavior. You don't need any sort of shadowy people or behind-the-scenes plan to explain any of the stuff that's going on.
Kanye, Mel Gibson, they're just crazy.
All right, I want to respond.
Nick. Yeah, please.
Okay. So I'm glad that you said that. That's the thesis. It's certain people act a certain way sometimes. To suggest that there's any sort of tribal loyalty or anything like that is really, really weird, really crazy. I always love the weasel words. It's always like, because I'll give you my thesis in a second, but I just want to respond to that. It's always like these weasel words, like really weird, really crazy. I'll tell you what's not crazy. Jews have been a diaspora people for 2,000 years. In the last 150 years, they have made an effort to resettle Palestine, which they consider their holy land. They consider their historic homeland. They have, by hook and by crook, in violent ways and through corruption, internationally, conspired in the sense that it's people that have made an agreement to make that happen, to resettle Jews in Palestine. And they did it in some legitimate ways, some illegitimate ways, in Europe, in the Middle East, in America. And in many cases, it was violent. It involved subterfuge. It involved corruption. The idea that like that pattern of behavior is happening, it's not really weird. It's not really crazy. You're right. People act in certain ways. People act according to their nationality, tribe, ideas they have. And so my thesis is that Jews in particular have a tribal as well as a religious reason to act the way they do. They're disproportionately represented in many sectors of America. And by the way, they're not jobs. You know, saying that
banking is a job? Give me a break, right?
Exactly. Well, banking is, but owning all the banks.
Owning a bank is the job.
Owning all the banks is not a job. You may get an Asian programmer, an Asian IT guy, because Asians are good at math disproportionately. That's true. You might get a Mexican landscaper because it's cheap, low-skill labor that Mexicans are performing. Jews owning all the banks is something that they have inherited over centuries and millennia because of politics and because of religion. And so if we want to talk about how that got to be, I don't think there's anything crazy about that. I think it's actually an interesting and important question because these are the decision makers in the society. It's not just people that are the legislators. We have to talk about the big money people. We got to talk about the media. We got to talk about the people in the bureaucracy. Determining their motivations and who they are is an important attribute of understanding why things are the way they are in America. The Jewish identity explains so much of it. That's the thesis.
Okay. What's your response to that?
What topic do you want to start with?
I mean, that he's saying that it isn't a coincidence that they're involved in.
It's not a coincidence. Nothing in history is a coincidence. But the question isn't whether it's a coincidence. The question is, remember, the JQ does not just state that Jews happen to be overrepresented in some industries. Now, people like Nick will try to shift that argument. Well, aren't there a lot of Jews there? But that's not the JQ. The JQ says that there is an intentional effort by those people to congregate all of their power and then to use that power to control the levers of society in very particular ways in order to effect positive outcomes for them, oftentimes at the expense of others. That's the JQ.
Okay, let me pose the next question then for you guys. Do you not think that Zionism pushes that?
Zionism does, and we can try to say that like it's just because we're oh God, sorry, I'm not gonna get triggered.
There it is. No, you're fine. You're fine, bro.
We could try to say that like it's because of some weird Jewish blah blah blah. But the reality is, the United States wants an ally in the Middle East. Israel is our best ally that we have in the Middle East. Just like Turkey is a strong ally in the Middle East.
Because we give them money. That's why.
The idea that we need like a Jewish conspiracy or some Jewish plan to explain that, we don't need one. Just like we don't need a Turkish conspiracy.
Wait.
Just like we don't need a Turkish conspiracy to explain why we're so close to Turkey in the Middle East, despite all the political disagreements that we have with them.
I want to really laser focus in on this. So, Stephen,
did you finish your point before he starts?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so Stephen, I want to hear what your opinion is on Israel. So, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that Israel is America's closest ally because Israel benefits America the most. Is that right?
I'm saying that Israel is a close ally to the United States because there's a benefit for them being an ally in the Middle East. Yes.
What is the benefit?
The benefit is geopolitical. The benefit is that we've got a strong ally in that region of the world. Okay. It helps us deploy military assets. It helps us have bases in these areas. And, yeah, sure.
How many bases do we have in Israel?
I don't know how many bases we have.
Okay, really? What do we deploy from Israel?
I don't even know in terms of economy. Nothing. There's absolutely no economic, no beneficial interest whatsoever for Israel being there in the United States.
No Israelis died in the Iraq War. Everything in the big controversy actually for the Muslim world is that Saudi Arabia allowed us to station there and use their airspace, which is like a total.
We're friends with Saudi Arabia too, are we not?
I know. But
is that
we're not arguing about Saudi Arabia.
Wait, why are we friends with Saudi Arabia if the Saudi Arabians and the Jewish people don't get along?
That's the point.
If they don't always get along, why are we friends with Saudi Arabia then too?
Hang on. We could talk about Saudi Arabia in a second. I want to talk about Israel. So you said that we're allied with Israel because they provide us a benefit. I said, what's a benefit? You said, well, it's a geostrategic. I said, what does that mean? You said, well, we deploy stuff and blah, blah, blah. And I just said, well, no, actually, they don't do any of that. So I want to stick to the same question. What does Israel do for us specifically?
Specifically, I wouldn't be able to tell what Iraq does for us specifically either. No, I don't know. 100%. I don't know.
Okay, well, the answer is nothing. And the answer is nothing. We give them $3.8 billion per year in aid. That's in addition to all kinds of other special provisions. Every other country, because you're right to some extent about the foreign aid. We give a lot of these countries foreign aid, but there's a reciprocal advantage for foreign aid. Like, for example, we give Egypt a lot of foreign aid. You want to know why we give Egypt a lot of foreign aid? They became the second they became the second largest recipient of foreign aid after the Camp David Accords in 1978. They were the first nation to sign a peace treaty with Israel. It was only after that they became the number 2 recipient of foreign aid. But one of the benefits that we get from the foreign aid, besides that we brokered a peace deal with Egypt, it was very controversial, very unpopular. is that Egypt buys our military equipment with the money we give them. Israel's the only country in the world that they don't have to spend all the foreign aid money they get on the American defense industry. They can spend it on their own defense industry. Only country that gets that sweetheart deal. In addition, we have a special part of the aid that we give Israel that we give it all in a lump sum at the beginning of the year, as opposed to giving it over the course of the year. We give it to them as a lump sum. And what they do with the money is they actually buy our American Treasury notes so they can make interest. Isn't that beautiful? So we give them the money and they demand this, only one, in a lump sum, and they take the $3.8 billion and they spend a little on their own defense industry. They spend a little on ours, and then they buy our Treasury notes and they make a little interest off the money we give them. The other thing is this. We give it to them as a loan, which is important. If we gave it to them as a grant, we would have to monitor how they spend it. Well, they don't need that kind of scrutiny on what they spend it on, so they accept it as a loan, but we forgive the loan. So there's no scrutiny, but we also don't collect it back. There's also no interest. These are all the kinds of special sweetheart provisions we give them, in addition to them being the number one recipient. And there's actually no tangible benefit that we derive from them. In fact, it's the opposite. Constantly, we are catching spies, like the Jonathan Pollard affair. In the Trump administration, they got busted for putting listening devices in Washington, D.C.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do we have any military bases in Israel?
You tell me you just looked it up on your phone.
I did. So we do have military bases in Israel. Okay. I see that we have radar installations in Israel.
Tell me about
Not only that, I see we have radar installations in Israel that literally help us keep track of what's going on over the skies of Iran. Do you think that provides us a geostrategic advantage?
No, because Iran is not our adversary. Why is Iran our adversary?
Because we had a geostrategic interest in Iraq, and Iraq was for a while an adversary. And Iran is also an adversary because Iran has international. The IRGC literally does ops all over the United States.
Really? Wait. The IRGC does ops in the United States?
No, hold on. Against U.S. troops.
Where?
What do you think? In Iraq. Why are we in Iraq? Why do you think Donald Trump killed Soleimani?
Why are we in Iraq?
Why do you think Donald Trump killed Soleimani? Who do you think was killing U.S. troops?
Because Adelson gave him $500 million in 2020.
Okay,
That's why.
Gotcha. It wasn't because there were attacks all over Iraq on U.S. troops that was done by the IRGC that was ran by Iran's IRGC.
Why were we in Iraq?
It doesn't matter why we're in Iraq. I'm telling you.
Guys. This is what we got to do. Let this Nick get off his things. If you want, Nick, I can give you a piece of paper and whatever. You can write down his questions. That way you can address each one.
Yeah,
so Destiny, ask what you were saying, get into your stuff, and then Nick will respond.
Sure. Okay. So to be fair, I do not know every single point of trivia that Anansi memorized about Israel. I don't have all the information. I will look it up when I can, and I read what I can, and I learn what I can, but I don't know every talking point. But I would like to say at the beginning, it kind of seemed like we're relying on the idea that Israel has no military installations for the United States in Israel. That seemed to be the point we're relying on. Well, now it seems like they do. Not only they do, but it seems like it also is one that provides geostrategic interest to the United States because of our operations in the Middle East. Now that you found that out, now you're like, oh, well, why do we care about Iran? I told you why we care about Iran. We care about Iran because the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC that was ran by Soleimani, the guy that Donald Trump assassinated because they killed so many U.S. troops in Iraq, that they have an interest in killing U.S. troops across the Middle East, and they had for a long time. And then you shifted the goalpost from, so the goalpost was, are the military bases in Israel? Okay. Do they provide geostrategic interest? Okay. Well, what's even the interest? Okay. Well, why are we in Iraq? You're going to shift the goalpost over and over and over again. You can shift as much as you want, but Israel does have U.S. military installations, and we also have weapon depots there as well. And there's a reason why we have them. It's geostrategic interest. And there is a reason why they're spying on people that are killing troops in the Middle East. So if you want to keep shifting the goalposts, we can. I don't know if we're going to get to the point where, like, why were Jews persecuted in Rome fucking how many thousand years ago?
Quick, just to clarify, what he said is, what he asked was, how many bases do we have? Didn't answer. Then he said, what benefit does America get from aiding Israel? And then he said nothing. He didn't say anything about the military bases.
Sure. Well, because the answer is to give the impression that we don't get anything from them, because you did say that. He said we get no benefit from them. We just ship a bunch of money over that.
Yeah. Did you finish your point though, Destiny? I want to make sure you get everything off before I turn it to Nick.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, go ahead, Nick.
Okay, so let me dive in here. The reason it's not shifting the goalpost, I asked you specifically, precisely, because you came on here without knowing it actually, and I want to point that out. You come on here and say, well, it's a weird, crazy conspiracy to suggest that Zionist Jews in America conspire to help Israel. That's weird and crazy. It's not tribal. It's not religious. You said the reason that it's way more boring and way more complex the Nazis would suggest it's because they actually provide a benefit. I said, really? What's the benefit? You said, oh, I don't know. So you just claimed that without knowing anything. Then you went on I'mRight.com. Your chat helped you out and said, well, actually, they have a military installation. Here's the reason why it matters why we're in Iraq. You told me the benefit that Israel provides to America is that they help us spy on Iran. Well, it would actually matter then why it's actually a geostrategic necessity for us to spy on Iran. Iran is thousands and thousands of miles away from the United States, as is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. You said for a moment, you said, well, the IRGC it operates internationally in America. And I said, really? And you said, oh, no, I mean in the Middle East. And then you say, well, why are we in the Middle East? Well, that's not important at all. Actually, it is, because America has no business in Iraq. We had no business in Iraq in 1990. We had no business in Iraq in 2003. We had no business in Iraq in 2011. It matters. Of course it matters. And here's why. My contention, of course, is that we were led to Iraq by Jewish Zionists. Jewish Zionists' number one enemy is Syria. Therefore, their number two enemy was Saddam Hussein. And the reason why is because of their northern border. In the 1980s, Israel invaded Lebanon, and a group called Hezbollah pushed them out. The history goes way, 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 way back. But basically, they are mortal enemies with the al-Assad family, with Hafez and Bashar al-Assad, and with Hezbollah, with Lebanon and Syria. It's about securing their northern border. In any case, they have said continuously over the last 40 years that their number one adversary they got to take out, the road to Damascus runs through Baghdad. They have to take out Iraq to take out Syria. So my contention is that we went to war with Iraq basically for the benefit of Syria. It follows, therefore.
Wait, can you explain that?
Let me finish. It's very quick. It's very quick.
Oh, fuck.
It's super
quick.
quick. And then you can reply. It follows then that if we're at war in Iraq because Jews pushed us into that war to benefit Israel, it's actually not a geostrategic benefit for us to be able to surveil Iran or to kill the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, because the only reason the IRGC can kill our troops in Iraq is because we're in Iraq for Israel. So that's actually just a roundabout way of saying, well, they benefit us so that we can benefit them. They benefit us so we can kill their enemies when we're fighting their enemies in Iraq for them. It does us no good. We would have no beef with Iran besides the hostage situation from 40 years ago. But other than that, we'd have no beef with Iran, Iraq, or Syria if it wasn't for our support for Israel.
Okay.
The problem is that I want to do a back and forth where I ask him a question, but if he rambles on like 40 minutes of bullshit history every time I ask him a question, it kind of
it's a put context so
sure.
that people
So I'm
understand.
curious, like when you say that the Israel is the one that dragged us into Iraq, can you elaborate that?
I can, yeah, very clearly. In 1996, they published a memo called the Clean Break Memo. Maybe you've heard of it. It's Douglas Pearl, David Feith, David Wormser. These guys all went into the Bush administration and created the Office of Special Plans in the Defense Office in the Department of Defense, which concocted this excuse for war in Iraq, this fabricated evidence about WMDs, this connection with the poisoning, and so on. And what they said, exactly, the anthrax. In the Clean Break Memo in 1996, all these, by the way, these guys are all Jewish Zionists. They all said it's about securing the realm of Israel, securing the northern border. We have to take out Saddam. We have to take out Syria. We have to take out Iran.
Why didn't we go to war with Syria or Iran then?
Oh, that's a great question. They tried to get us to war in Syria, if you remember. They fomented a Syrian civil war with ISIS, which was supported by both Israel and the United States.
Hold on. That's like 15 years later.
Yeah, because that was the plan. First Iraq, then Syria, then Iran.
Wait. So did we go to the first Gulf War and the second Gulf War because of Jews, or just the second one?
Both. Absolutely.
So
we went
the gassing of the Kurds and any of that, none of that mattered?
No, that's all ridiculous.
In Kuwait, that's all bullshit.
Well, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
In 1998, all these same guys, Wolfowitz and Abrams and all of them, Cohen, they all wrote a letter to Bill Clinton in 1998 before State of the Union and said, you got to address taking out Saddam. So they were talking about taking out Saddam for like 20 years. Then 9/11 happens and they go, oh, Saddam did 9/11. Oh, Saddam has WMDs. Let's go in. Yeah, it's all excuses, Destiny.
Why didn't they just depose him after the first Gulf War then?
Are you so naive to think that like gassing the Kurds is the reason we went in? Do you really believe that?
I more so than 4 Jewish guys drafted up a plan to get us into an arbitrary war in the Middle East.
In other words, Israel. It's more about bullshit humanitarian nonsense than it is about like spies, money, warfare. And like that's really the crux of it is you have this naive worldview. Yeah. Like, well, the government said they're gassing the Kurds. Yeah, just like Assad was gassing his own people and it was fucking fake and it was all white helmets with the UN down there.
Absolutely
and it was the rebels using chemical attacks. No, there isn't, and they should go and investigate that.
There's absolutely no evidence
there
of any of that. There's not a single international community in the fucking world that would back up the claim.
There isn't evidence.
Okay, let me ask this. Let me ask this. So are you, okay, so Destiny, just so I can make sure I get your stance correct here, are you saying that we went to war with Iraq because of the gassing of the Kurds?
I think that, yeah, I think in the invasion of Kuwait, I think it was a really big deal for internationally why we felt like we had to step in and intervene.
With the Kurds being killed.
Yeah, and then the chemical weapons on the Kurds.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so Saddam killing the Kurds in the northern part of Iraq is okay. What's your response to that?
We don't care about any of that. I guess.
I think that's ridiculous. I think
it's way more likely that 4 Jews somehow.
Well, let me ask this, Nick. Would you?
But not enough to depose Saddam, just enough to invade and leave him in
power.
power.
Let me finish.
Let's connect it. Would you say, Nick? Would you say that the gassing of the Kurds was a contributing factor, or you're saying it's not at all?
No, I don't think so at all. Here's why.
All right.
I think
so you don't think whatsoever it's not relevant whatsoever to the situation?
I think that is how they dress it up. I think that is basically United States foreign policy, is that we come up with pretexts and excuses to do what we want to do anyway. Like, for example, and I'm not trying to just zoom out here, but I am trying to give examples.
You don't think that mattered either, right?
What here's the big picture, Destiny, which is I think what you're missing. Is that we give a lot of excuses. We said there were WMDs in Iraq. That's why we went to Iraq.
Second Gulf War.
There weren't any.
You're mixing the first and second one.
No, I'm giving additional examples.
Well, why not just focus on the first Gulf War?
And here's
instead of
because
talking
you're
about
missing.
A lot of random shit.
Because now you're interrupting, trying to derail.
Because you like to conflate a whole bunch of shit together.
No, because I'm making a point. Because you're very naive and you think that the news media is telling you the truth about.
Well, just explain then. Why did we do the first Gulf War?
Which is war.
Okay, let him give his examples, and then can you please address the Gulf War for him?
Absolutely.
Give your examples, because he's just giving examples of why the United States lies to get in certain situations.
Because he doesn't have the answer to the first question. So he's going to obfuscate with stuff later.
He's going to answer the.
Look at this. This is crazy. Look, he's getting nervous.
I know.
He's getting nervous because he doesn't know anything about foreign policy, so he doesn't want to talk about it.
Because the 4 Jews made the plan in '96. They got us to invade Iraq.
Nick, so please cover your examples of how the United States does this to do things, and then please cover his first Gulf War, because that's what he's interested in.
100%.
All right.
So I'm making a bigger point about United States foreign policy, which is that we conduct regime change operations. We go to war all the time. There's always a pretext, whether it's a gassing of the Kurds or it's what happened in Kuwait. The same is true of Iraq with WMDs. The same is true of Libya. We deposed Gaddafi in Libya. They said because, it's not like democratic enough. Does anybody really believe?
That's not even true.
Hey, whoa. Does anybody really believe that we go to war with a NATO coalition and we deposed Gaddafi because the elections weren't free and fair? And the same thing is true of Syria. Constantly trying to create. Whoa, why are you interrupting me all the time? Is it because you're not confident in your positions? You have to derail?
Because every time you answer a question, you make up 50 bullshit questions. Bring up the deposition of Gaddafi.
Hey, everyone is acting like a nigger. Stop.
Destiny, just let him finish his examples, and then please address the first Gulf War for him.
Yes,
so
exactly.
You're giving your examples of America getting involved in foreign policy.
Remember, every answer relies on 30 random talking points. Yeah.
It's not random talking points. It's about because it's about your worldview. Your worldview is predicated, and I've seen your stream. I watch your stream. You always hand wave away all these Jews in the Defense Department. You hand wave away all the Jewish disproportionate stuff by saying that things are as they seem. There are people in the world, they act a certain way, but it can't be explained by a conspiracy. That's what I'm talking. That's why it matters to go through these examples, because you're going out there and saying, Israel benefits us because geostrategic. Well, what does that mean? Oh, I have no fucking idea. Well, we went to war in Kuwait because of the Kurds. Can you tell me why we went to war?
Hold on, Nick. Give your examples, then the first Gulf War, and then you can ask him a question after.
I already gave my examples.
Okay. Libya, what about the first Gulf War then?
Libya, Ukraine, all these different interventions. They're always a pretext.
None of these things are remotely similar to each other.
If I laugh, it looks like I'm not losing. If I laugh, it looks like I don't have a
let me name 15 random facts, and I'm going to say what every single thing you're talking about.
The Libyan invasion clearly
guys,
it's about Kurds.
Let's keep this civil. Okay, because he asked a question about the first Gulf War. Why did we go? Is that your question? Why did we go into war with the first Gulf War?
I'm just curious how Jews are concocting every single fucking thing. And then also keep in mind too,
everything.
The only evidence of any of the fact that the Jews are behind this is because some people that are Jewish are involved in writing some of the plans.
Well, explain Kanye. Explain JP Morgan and Kanye. Let's go to the good stuff.
That is always going to be.
Let's go to Kanye.
In the totality of this conversation, the strongest evidence that Nick will ever offer for his position is some of the people involved are Jewish.
Okay, so let's hit the first Gulf War, because he's asking why did we get involved in the first Gulf War?
We got involved in the first Gulf War for the same reason we got involved in the Iraq War. It's because the Jews had a problem with Saddam Hussein. The Zionists had a problem with Saddam Hussein. It's the same situation. And here's why I bring up the letter to Bill Clinton 98. It's because once again, we can take the explanation that we were given by the news media that Israel our closest ally because they help us. Went to war in Iraq because WMDs, I don't know, we were fooled. We went to war in the Gulf War because of the Kurds. What I'm trying to say is That was already the policy. They were agitating for war for a long time. The neocons were agitating for war for a long time.
Can you tell me, how did we make Saddam Hussein invade Kuwait and then use gas weapons against the Kurdish people?
We didn't make them do that. That's the pretext.
How
That's
are we
the
agitating
excuse.
for it?
That's the excuse.
Yeah, can you tell me how we were agitating for it?
No. I'm not saying they agitated for that.
Okay. What are we agitating for?
I'm sorry. What are you saying?
I'm trying to figure out how the Jews made us go. I'm trying to figure out, how did the Jews make Saddam Hussein?
Trying to figure it out.
I am. I'm asking you. Teach me.
Trying to figure it out.
How did the Jews make Saddam Hussein invade Kuwait and use chemical
following,
weapons?
Though.
That's what I'm asking you. Tell me simply. Without talking about Benghazi, without talking about China, without talking about Ukraine,
without talking about other examples of American foreign policy to establish a concrete worldview.
And dialogue trees.
And it's always derailing. It's always derailing and sophistry from you because you have no idea what you're talking about. You have no idea what you're talking about.
Ask your question, and then he'll answer it.
How did the Jews make us invade in the first Gulf War?
But see, that's a totally incorrect. It's so funny.
You're so triggered.
So funny.
I see the trigger in you.
I'm not triggered, but that's just what you do. When you lose a debate, when you lose a debate,
this is like your specialty, area of interest. I don't know fucking half the shit you're talking about, and you don't have an answer for me.
It's just like the weasel words.
You rely on somebody having no understanding of any history you're talking about, and you're going to say random fucking shit to win the argument.
It's so weird. It's so crazy.
Okay. The question is, how did? Say it one more time. What was it?
He brings up like 5 different conflicts.
Destiny, please ask the question.
It's a false premise. Here was the question is. He said,
so that we don't derail,
he said, how did the Jews make Saddam Hussein do these things?
Yes,
I never said the Jews made Saddam Hussein do those things. Were you listening?
Oh, so Saddam Hussein chose to invade Kuwait and gas the Kurdish people.
I don't know that he gassed the Kurdish people, by the way. I don't know if I believe that
6 million?
Let's say they did, though. As I said before, that's the pretext, Destiny. Countries do bad things all the time.
Were there other countries that were using chemical weapons on their own citizens in the Middle East that we had no interest in? Wasn't that one of the reasons why we went after Gaddafi, was claims of torturing people, locking them up in prisons?
No, we said.
Why is it that we went to invade? Why is it that we went to invade? Why is it that we went to, when we went to depose Gaddafi? Why is it that even China abstained from voting against U.S. involvement in that? Because they knew that Gaddafi was a fucked up person, and they knew that that country was being ran in fucked up ways.
China's not ran by fucked up people, and there's no other fucked up.
I'm just saying, China had the ability to enter, and everybody say, "Don't do it." There's a reason why they abstained.
Let me ask you this. So we went into Libya, we went into Iraq because it's fucked up guys doing fucked up stuff. Are there any,
from the first Gulf War.
Are there any leaders? Are there any leaders doing fucked up stuff in Africa and Latin America?
I think that generally the United States.
Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yeah, they're probably. Yeah, of course.
Okay, so why? So where are the ground wars in Africa and Latin America?
No geostrategic interest, and I don't know if there are. I don't know if there's democracies there. I don't know if there are democracies that we feel like are worth supporting.
What was the geostrategic interest in toppling Saddam Hussein in 2003?
That entire area, because of its location near Russia, I believe, is of interest to the United States.
Because of it, so we invaded Iraq because of its location near Russia.
I didn't say we invaded Iraq.
See, this is why.
I'm not going to. You don't want to answer the question.
This is why he
doesn't want me to answer. Nick, please.
Okay, now there's no interruptions. Okay,
let him answer.
Let's hear it about Russia.
The reason why we invaded.
Sonic the Hedgehog. Let's
go. The reason why we invaded Iraq,
and then you can answer.
The reason why we invaded Iraq is because Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait with shitty pretext and used chemical warfare against the people of Kurdistan, the Kurds living in the north of Iraq. The reason why we have an interest in Iraq is because of the location on the globe. So if you want to tell me why we're interested in Iraq, I can tell you that. If you want to tell me why we invaded, I can tell you that. Those are the two separate answers to that. Where were the Jews involved?
Well, wait.
Now
so
let him respond.
I want to follow on this a little bit. So you said, well, we invaded Iraq and Libya because even China realized that Gaddafi was a shitty guy. This is like Reddit talk. Gaddafi was a total
Where did the first Gulf War
asshole.
No, that he moved
Gaddafi was a total freaking asshole. That's why we invaded. And I said, okay,
tortured them.
Whoa, interruptions. Can we get a check on that?
Hit the Gaddafi thing, and then please answer his question about the Iraq.
So I said, well, what about all the shitty people in Africa? What about all the shitty people in Latin America, terrorist groups? And he said, well, so really, it's not about their shitty people. It's because they're shitty people, and it was geostrategically important. I said, what's a geostrategic benefit? It's near Russia. Really? So let me get this straight. If we invaded Iraq and the geostrategic benefit is that it was near Russia, which look at a fucking map, why wouldn't we just go into Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia? Why wouldn't we go into Ukraine? Why wouldn't we accelerate Ukraine's membership in NATO? This is in 2003. Why would we make Ukraine a NATO member in 2003 when Putin had been in office for 3 years? Why invade Iraq if that was the geostrategic benefit?
Sure. First of all, we've already drafted nations that are literally bordering Russia into NATO. That's what we did with the Baltics, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. So we've already done that. in terms of reaching into countries that are more northern and eastern, or from Iraq, my guess is going to be because we don't have any connection or reasonable way to support those countries. We just
wait, what does that mean? We have no reasonable way to support
the geographic locations of places like Turkey and Israel make them easier for long distance support rather than places like Armenia, Azerbaijan.
So where's Azerbaijan on a map? Do you know?
Northeast of Iraq.
It's east of Turkey.
Yes.
So it's right there. It's right there with Armenia. It's right there with Turkey. It's right there with Georgia. Georgia and Turkey are allies. Why wouldn't we just go for Azerbaijan?
Georgia already had Russian troops in the country.
And we couldn't have gone in there and repelled that in 2008?
Russian troops on the Russian border? No, I don't think we would do that.
That's what we're doing right now, dipshit. That's what we're doing right now. And it's 20 years later.
I'm sorry.
Russia's having an arms buildup.
The United States does not have military troops in Ukraine.
Yes, they do. Wow.
No, they don't.
So naive.
No, they don't.
Yes, we do.
Then why isn't Russia screaming it from the rooftops? If we had notice how we pivoted away from the first Gulf War.
That is incredible.
Because we're
amazing naivete on display right here.
Okay, we because I see what's going on here. Basically, we're answering one question by bringing up examples, and those examples basically create a whole other conversation. So
no, they shouldn't, but it's because he can't answer that.
Well,
the point is to bring up. If I can bring up 10 different conflicts and say the Jews,
keep looking at your chat.
If I can bring up 10 different things and I say the Jews, and then I push on any one of those, and it's like
to be fair, hold on. To be fair, both of you guys have done it. So, did you get to answer the first Gulf War thing?
He doesn't have an answer.
We already went over.
He has no answer. We didn't go over.
No, we did. I said it was pretextual. That's the answer.
Every war is pretextual.
Oh, finally, an admission. I agree.
You're right. There's a reason for every war. They're not random.
Thank you very much.
The pretext was them invading Kuwait and using chemical warfare against the Kurdish people.
False pretext.
Oh, so that didn't happen. They didn't invade Kuwait. They didn't gas the Kurds.
Are you both comfortable with leaving the Gulf War and going to Kanye?
No.
Hold on.
I want to continue with the Iraq War.
Yeah, now, because he did ask, because the two reasons you gave for Iraq was
I can tell you there's a general reason the United States will support countries that are of geostrategic interest. That usually means next to important travel ways for trade.
Of course.
It could mean geographic location in relation to China or Russia.
Yes.
And then there's a third reason, places that have somewhat tenable democracies.
Yeah.
Like that's an important thing. That's why we don't intervene so much in African countries, because we're worried that if we start shipping in a ton of weapons, shit will get fucked. In Iraq, we abandoned that strategy.
Hold on, guys,
and that was one of the reasons why the post-Iraq war, the second Gulf War, was such an unbelievable fucking shit show, because we invaded the country, we dismantled the government, and we realized that was fucked, so we tried to build another government, and that was even more fucked, and arguably a lot of what we ended up shipping to Iraq went straight to fucking ISIS.
So
that was one of the bad things about that. Was like the bad thing about Iraq.
Okay, let me ask
and
you
Afghanistan as well. Yes.
Let me ask you this, just so Nick can properly respond to the Iraq war.
Sure.
Are you saying that Israeli involvement had nothing to do with us going into Iraq?
That
Israeli involvement.
I'm sure that people from Israel were probably happy we did it. I'm sure there are Jewish people in the United States that are probably happy we did it. But I don't think the Jews made it happen. Like, I think if you delete Israel and you delete Jewish people, God willing for Nick, from the world, we're still probably going to
so
Iraq.
You think we would have invaded regardless of Israeli
regardless of any Jewish influence?
What's your response to that? He's saying Israel pretty much played no part in it.
Okay, well, I mean, I was about to respond to a lot of this. I would say in the first place, he said, well, we don't go into Africa because they can't build a democracy.
Okay.
As if Iraqis are any more democratic than fucking Africans. That's number one. Number two, he said, well, we wouldn't go to war in Africa because the weapons would just go everywhere, as though that's not exactly what's been happening in the Middle East for 40 years. That was happening before we even arrived. That was happening with the Soviets against the Mujahideen in 1979. It's been going on. So both of those are two arguments that are just crap.
Okay.
Like,
you disagree. Okay.
And so,
then what about the Iraq? Yeah.
And then about
Iraq
Jews
part.
in Iraq, he says, well, maybe there were Israelis that supported it. No. There were very powerful Zionist Jews that supported it. It was a number 2 in the DOD. It was a number 3 in the DOD. It had a Near East policy in the National Security Council. These are the guys that put together. And by the way, it's not like I'm just listing people that were in the government. They specifically created. No, I'm about to answer that. They specifically created the Office of Special Plans. The Office of Special Plans is where all this phony intelligence about WMDs from Iraq was coming from. It was.
It was not. The OSP was also requested by Cheney and Bush.
You can they didn't look it up.
I have looked it up.
Let him finish his point, then you can go ahead and say it was phony. Let him just finish his point about the Office of Special.
So they contradicted the CIA. They contradicted American intelligence. They had Mossad people going in between all day long. Not only that, but these are all guys. I don't know how people can just pass this off as a coincidence. All these guys that I'm talking about in the government were 10 years prior writing a clean break memo that was literally commissioned by the Prime Minister of Israel. The Prime Minister of Israel said, hey, guys, go write a memo about our foreign policy. And the foreign policy playbook they wrote was this: first Iraq, then Syria, then Iran. Then these guys all get in the Bush White House, and that's, go figure, exactly what they push for. On September 20th, 9 days after 9/11, 40 prominent neocons at the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, New York Times wrote a letter to George Bush and said, if you don't support a war against Hezbollah, against Iraq, against Syria, then we're going to say you're an ally of the terrorists. You're a cuck in the war on terrorism. Those guys were all Jewish Zionists, by the way. All these neocons, they're the most prominent conservatives. At the same time, that same week, they're drafting plans for war against Iraq. We didn't even know who did it. And when we found out, it was people that trained in Afghanistan, funded by Saudis, connected to Pakistanis. Why are they talking about going to war against Hezbollah, which is in Lebanon? Why are they talking about going to war in Syria? Syria helped us in the war on terror. Why are they talking about going to an Iran? It makes no sense. Other than that, this is the fucking playbook that they wrote, commissioned by Netanyahu. It's not crazy. It's not weird. That's just the facts.
All right. So again, every single argument relies on this. There are some Jewish people that said this, therefore that's the plan. There's a reason why you won't answer specifically anything related to the first or even the second Gulf War, and then you restate some of my points, you make them your own, and then you just keep harping this idea that the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. The Office of Special Plans was created because Cheney and Bush wanted to take unvetted intel because they really wanted to go to Iraq and fight a war there, and they didn't like the information they were getting from the CIA or the FBI, which is interesting because if U.S. intelligence is so corrupted, why the fuck would you even need to create the Office of Special Plans? If the Mossad and the Jews and all these people have so much influence throughout every single hierarchy of the United States government, can you tell me why the OSP was even created? Why couldn't they just fake intel from the CIA?
Because their positions were in the DOD. I mean, you're telling me, wait a minute, they didn't have any clout. They just created an office within the Defense Department, the number 2 and 3 in the fucking Pentagon.
Yeah, why did they have, what I'm asking you, I'll repeat the question, because you won't have an answer.
They used what they had.
This is how they used what they had? They literally created a new office.
Why didn't they do it in the CIA when they did it in the DOD?
When we talk about conspiracies, they're always all-powerful, but then they're also super cocked at the same time. If these guys have so much influence in government, they're so powerful, why the fuck would they create a whole separate office? Why wouldn't they just fake shit from the CIA?
Okay, he's saying. Okay, I see what he's saying.
Let me summarize real quick for the viewers that don't understand. Okay,
please,
there probably was no good reason to think that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Okay, and the actual intel in the United States that was doing research at the time was reporting as much to the White House. Chances are
WMDs.
No. However, Bush and Cheney had a separate office created, the Office of Special Plans, and what they did was they took unverified, unvetted intel and they shot that up right to the White House, and they said, "Hey, look at this report. Hey, look at this report. Maybe there's something there." But intel is a messy business. There's a lot of verifications we have to do, right? And as a result of some of that unverified bullshit intel, they used that as a pretext for weapons of mass destruction. They went to Iraq. We just put Saddam Hussein. Probably a really bad way to start that war. But the problem is, and again, this is my biggest issue with these types of all-encompassing conspiracies that run every part of the world, is that they're so fucking powerful. Why would they create a whole cuck separate institution that retards on fucking YouTube and cozy.tv can research? Why wouldn't they have just faked intel through the CIA?
Okay. So you're saying why create this entire other entity?
Like, how suspicious are you? Where it's like, we're going to create the Office of Jewish Plans. I mean, I'm sorry, the Office of Special Plans, not the Jewish one. And then we're going to use that to go. Why not just go through the CIA?
Okay.
This is so.
Okay, that's fine.
Hang on.
I see this question. This question is, why create an entire another branch of U.S. government to create a narrative to go into Iraq when we could have just faked intel from the CIA in the first place? I see what you're going.
That's so funny to me. I mean, because first of all,
He won't answer that, by the way. Go ahead.
Okay, is that interruption going to be clocked?
He's going to answer. He's saying, why create another agency?
He's going to ramble. He's not going to answer.
To come up with information.
There it is again. There it is again. See, they don't want me to talk.
The blue blinker, need to chill. Everyone chill. Go.
So let me jump in. I love this argument because first it was like, well, it's really weird and crazy and blah, blah, blah. Then it turns into, well, why would the Zionist Jews that wrote the memo and work in the DOD in the number 2 and 3 positions, why would they create an office to funnel in unvetted intelligence from Mossad instead of doing it in the CIA? I don't know, because they were in the DOD, they were in the Pentagon. I mean, it's like presupposing the whole premise, which is that so let me get this straight. You're conceding that there are Zionist Jews that wrote the clean break memo working in the Pentagon. They were funneling unvetted intelligence given to them, and this is reported by witnesses from the Mossad to, which is Israeli intelligence. You probably don't know that because you're ignorant.
Geostrategic interest of the Middle East. Israeli intelligence.
Thanks for another interruption. So you're admitting you have Zionist Jews who wrote the memo in the Pentagon and in the State Department, in the DOD. They're funneling unvetted intelligence from foreign intelligence agencies into the government, and that was part of the war in Iraq. Is that all what you're saying? You're admitting that?
Yeah, you restated my whole answer. Let's see if you'll answer my question now. Go ahead.
Well, so then I don't think there's any disagreement. I mean, if he's going to sit there and say but he's wrong because he's saying they control everything and everyone. No one ever said that. My thesis at the beginning is that you have these Zionist Jews in these positions. They have leveled up. In some cases, they have been helped by foreign intelligence to get there, and they use their influence and power to help the state of Israel, which is basically what you're conceding. I never once said they control everything. Anybody will tell you that there are divisions, the CIA, FBI, NSA, State Department, DOD. There is factionalism within all these groups, and some are more infiltrated than others. So nobody said, well, they control the whole government. If I can prove they only control the DOD, then therefore I win. And we agree. You're right. Zionist Jews in the DOD did give intelligence from the Mossad to Bush to bring us to war in Iraq. We agree.
Why did they need to create a separate office for it?
Because they needed to bypass the CIA.
Yeah.
Why couldn't they have just gone to the White House themselves?
There's rules and regulations they got to follow. That department doesn't have to.
There's rules and regulations for going to war in Iraq by creating a separate office.
This is a mechanism that they did.
Yeah.
Why would they create that then?
I just don't know why you wouldn't just pass it up through the CIA.
That's what they didn't pass it up through the CIA. They passed it up through they created this office special plans.
They created
reported to the NSC.
Just
to be clear,
here's a summary. Basically, what he's saying is that the CIA was not compromised with Zionist interests to the same degree that the DOD was, so they did it through the DOD.
Exactly.
Is that the answer?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's the answer.
Pretty much.
So the CIA was not, because they're different agencies.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that.
Yeah.
But like the idea that the Jewish Zionists have the levers on our financial system, on I guess the DOD and the Pentagon, but our intelligence
now we're talking
agencies.
About the financial system.
Okay.
Well, no. These are your words. You're saying that Jews run everything. You can look at me. It's okay. Don't be nervous.
The topic was Iraq.
It was, but you never gave me an answer.
I like how you threw a funny part in to distract from the fact you're losing. Go ahead, look at me. Don't be nervous.
Okay.
You're the one that's
I see you
losing.
staring off into the corner. You're having like a little autism attack.
It's amusing.
I'm
just amused that you said they weren't Iraq.
Okay, let me just, besides the insults.
No. I'm just saying that like it's frustrating because it reminds me of arguing with my mom, right? Where she says the elections are rigged. Well, how did Trump win in 2016? Well, enough good people showed up that day. Like it's always rigged until it's not. I don't know how, if we get so much Israeli intelligence, it's so corrupt. Why couldn't Israelis just passed on fake intelligence through the CIA and gotten us to go to war with Iraq that way?
I think his answer was basically that
his answer was that we can't do it that way. Yeah, we weren't compromised that way.
The CIA to the degree where it can go up, where we can go into war, but we were compromised at the DOD level, so they did it through the chain of the DOD.
Gotcha.
Steven has a better strategy, though.
Let's say that I buy, which is ridiculous.
I'm just summarizing what Nick said.
I understand. Let's say that I buy all of that, which is already too much, and it's hilarious.
All right.
Why is it that they created their own little Office of Jewish Plans? They got us to go to Iraq. Why the fuck didn't they get us to get rid of Saddam Hussein? Why did we keep him there?
They did.
What do you mean? We kept him there.
We got him in 2003.
Why didn't we get him in the first Gulf War?
The fact is, we got him.
Whoa, shit!
What's funny about that?
Why didn't we get him in the first Gulf War?
We got him.
Did they need a second office?
They needed a 9/11.
Oh, okay.
Boom. So there's no answer. So
he did answer.
No. Hold up. So
that's amazing.
To be clear, because also, by the way, the best answer. The best reason for why we should have gotten rid of Saddam Hussein after 9/11 was because of the first Gulf War. So if we would have deposed him after Gulf War I, I don't think anybody would have even cared, right?
So,
the motherfucker used chemical warfare against the Kurdish people.
The argument
and invaded Kuwait, which is to this day, like one of the most U.S. loyalist fucking countries on the planet, because we saved them when Saddam Hussein invaded. So my question is, if the Jewish people I'm laying it all out, okay? The Jewish people have so much influence in the DOD, they create a special office because Israel really wants us to go to war with Iraq to get rid of Saddam Hussein.
Okay.
They managed to do all of that successfully, and they get the most powerful nation in the history of the world to go to war with another nation that doesn't even border Israel to depose Saddam Hussein, but we don't even get rid of Saddam Hussein. What the fuck?
Well, hold on.
Even border Israel. Wow. What a
when
lack
was
of
the Office of
understanding.
Special Operations created again?
I think it was 2003.
So it was created after 9/11. I think that's what he's trying to say. Is like they needed the 9/11. That's why they created the office, and then that allowed them to circumvent CIA
but hang
intelligence.
on, let me argue.
For the first Gulf War,
this guy can ramble and interrupt.
Bro, you rambled so much.
No.
Nick,
good.
Yeah. All right.
Jesus is king. Go Nick.
I was just summarizing what he was saying.
That's amazing. And I can argue here.
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
It's amazing that the argument started out with crazy, weird. They think Jews run everything to like, well, why didn't the Jews take out Saddam Hussein the first time? Why didn't the Jews do it this way instead of this other way? Will you engage with the fact that these people wrote the clean break memo for a foreign government and then were in the most important national security positions 7 years later? Will you engage with that at all?
Yeah,
will you address that?
But the problem is you haven't established anything other than the fact that these guys are Jewish.
Tell me what you think about that.
Yeah, they might have been Jewish. They might have been like Israel.
They were. Don't say they might have been. That's a weasel.
They were Jewish. They probably supported the nation of Israel. Okay.
No. They don't. Hang on. Let me tell you the facts.
Nick, I don't care. Unless you can show me. Because you have to show me a connection.
Why don't you care?
It's not enough to say they're Jewish and
Destiny, he's getting there. He's
not going to. He has no evidence. But go for it.
That's amazing.
He's going to talk for a while, but there is nothing.
The clean break memo is the foundation. Go ahead.
So, because I want you to engage with this. In 1996, it's not like maybe they supported Israel, maybe they're Jewish. Again, with the weasel words. No, they were Jewish. They were Zionists. They didn't probably support Israel. This was commissioned by the state of Israel. Bibi Netanyahu commissioned them to write this. And they write in 1996 a memo that says, in order to secure the realm of Israel, we need Saddam gone. We need Syria destabilized. We need Iran gone. These are guys that then go and work at the highest level positions in the DOD. They create the OSP, which creates the intelligence for the war in Iraq. And that was their plan, actually, to go into Syria. If you look at some of the classified documents, they wanted to go into Syria, but the Iraq war was a big deal. And we wound up supporting rebels in Syria anyway. So will you engage with the fact that that's a pretty clear connection?
It's not.
That's not.
It's not. You have to show that Israel was controlling the United States foreign policy. There was popular support of the United States for the war. There was support in Congress for the war.
Wow.
We got the authorized use of military force. We did the first Gulf War, and we did the second one. You don't need Jewish anything to explain any of that.
So a foreign
and naturally, there's a lot of Israel enjoys broad support in the United States by most of its citizens. You don't need to control the media. Okay.
We can talk about the media next. But he is saying the clean break memo. So you're saying that has nothing to do with it.
Sure. Remember, I mean, maybe, but the problem is what he'll do is he'll say 4 Jews were involved.
Amazing.
They might have even been from Israel, which I don't even know. I'd have to go look up every name. Usually when I look these people up, it'll be like they were born in New York to a Jew or something. I don't know about these guys in particular, right? But the issue is you can never show a connection of like, this was the plan, this is the evidence. It's always like, these guys were Jewish, they supported Israel, they wrote this document, they control the whole United States. Now remember earlier I said they couldn't just do it through the CIA? No, they had to make a separate office. Okay, what about the fact that all the United States supports them? Well, they control all of the media, which would be more impressive, by the way, than actually controlling the CIA.
We'll talk about the media here in a second, because that's another topic. I think what Nick is saying...
I understand. I just real quick, there's always this duality of they're kind of cucked and they really don't have any insight or infiltration into our intelligence agencies, but they also control the entire media apparatus of the entire United States. I don't know how they can do one but not the other.
It's two different things, but what Nick is basically saying is that you have people that have Israeli interests at heart that are in high positions of the government that influence foreign policy for the betterment of Israel.
Yeah, for example, Zelensky, you said duality, his dual citizenship. Is Zelensky a Jew to you?
I don't think about people that way. I don't think about. I'm not a Jew hunter looking for who's Jewish or who's not.
Let me jump in. Let me summarize my point.
Okay. So go ahead.
Oh, fucking I was right. Apparently the guy was born in New York, 1941. Richard Norman period. Yeah. So how many of these guys were even born? Were any of the guys that you mentioned?
Wait, what does that mean? What does that mean?
I'm just curious. Were any of the guys that you mentioned were they born in Israel?
Point or what?
Can I just ask something? Sorry. Were any of the guys you mentioned?
They were born in Israel. I said they're Jewish Zionists.
Yeah, he did say that.
Why are you saying, oh my gosh? I said they're Jewish Zionists.
So they're U.S. citizens. Okay, go ahead.
I said they're Jewish Zionists, Destiny. I didn't say they were born in Israel.
They're American citizens, too. They're who have a right to serve in the military and are DOD, just like any other citizen.
Okay,
international Jew.
It's so amazing.
Interesting that you didn't mention that, though.
Another interruption.
Okay, gotcha.
We're not going to control that. That's okay.
He did call them Zionists, which you can be a Zionist and hold a U.S. citizenship while simultaneously.
When you call someone a Zionist Jew, then taking orders from Netanyahu.
Wow.
I mean, it feels like
that's crazy. There's no Zionist Jews with Americans. Yeah. Fucking Sheldon Adelson had American citizenship. Jonathan Pollard had American citizenship. It didn't mean they weren't loyal to Israel. Talk about literally just, if you're losing the debate, just lie about what the other person was saying. Wait a second, they were born in Israel. Throw my head up and laugh. Nobody fucking said that. I said they were Zionist Jews. I hope people are paying attention. Jeez.
Yeah. Okay.
So let me.
You want to summarize? Go ahead, please.
Let me summarize my point.
Stop laughing, Sneako.
You stop laughing.
Go ahead.
So let me summarize my point. My point is this. Okay, it's not just 4 guys. I said, and this is the whole debate. I said you have guys at the highest level of government. I'm talking about these specific guys because it's so egregious. They get commissioned by a foreign government to write up a strategy for that foreign government, and then they go and implement it in the United States government 10 years later. And people can say, well, but there was support for the war, but the American people supported it. I threw out evidence and said, well, in 1998, all the same Jewish neocons, including all the 4 authors of the memo, including all the people that signed that letter on September 15, 2001, they signed a letter to Clinton in 98 before 9/11, before the WMD stuff, supporting a toppling of Saddam Hussein. In other words, they wanted it before there was a 9/11. They wanted it before there was popular support, before it was in the conversation. 9/11 happens, and within 5 days, it's not just 4, you got 40 prominent Jewish neocons, Washington Post, Weekly Standard, New Republic, Wall Street Journal, New York Times. They all write, and by the way, all Jewish columnists too, Charles Krauthammer's another one. They all sign a letter saying, you got to go to war, not just in Iraq, but against Hezbollah, against Syria, against Iran. What I'm trying to do is paint a picture. I'm not saying that the Jewish lobby is omnipotent. I'm not saying that they control every aspect of government. I'm saying that it's not a coincidence that they're there. It's not innocuous that they're there. That was the original premise of the debate is, are they just people that happen to be there and do things? Or are there people in these positions where it becomes problematic because they have a tribal loyalty, a political, religious loyalty? That was the thesis of the debate. I never said, they control everything and this and that. And I think that's been basically established. But you want to debate like, well, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? Without actually engaging with any of the evidence I provided.
I've engaged with everything you've given me.
No.
But you're not providing anything compelling.
Okay.
I don't know why,
Okay.
if for everything you're saying, for instance, so first of all, let's acknowledge you are purporting that these Jewish people are among the most powerful and influential people in all of world history, right? If they're controlling literal foreign policy from the United States of America, which is the strongest empire that has ever existed in U.S. history and in the world history, right? You're asserting that these people are the strongest and most influential people in all of world history. And then you're telling me that for the first Gulf War, they couldn't just get rid of Saddam after he used chemical weapons. You're telling me that they needed 9/11 to go in to Iraq the second time. Why didn't we also go into it? You're saying that Israel wanted to get rid of Syria. They wanted to get rid of the Ayatollah in Iran. Why the fuck didn't we go in? Why didn't we go to those 2 countries next, right after Iraq? We went to Afghanistan, didn't we? We didn't like Pakistan. We went into there to kill Osama bin Laden. Bin Laden. Why didn't we just go right into Iran, right into Syria after Iraq?
Well, and I addressed that. Again, it doesn't mean that they are omnipotent, but they are pushing for that constantly. They're pushing for war with Iran constantly. They're pushing for war with Syria constantly. And you're ignoring the fact that there is a shadow war going on against Assad in Syria. There has been for over a decade now. And that is supported by Israel. That's supported by the United States. And by the way, it also has John McCain's fingerprints all over. We could get into
why not get rid of Assad like we did with Gaddafi if the Jews are so influential?
Because the war was extremely unpopular. Barack Obama gets elected in 2008 on this, we're going to end the war in Iraq. And Barack Obama actually, hang on. You're interrupting me. Okay. I'm answering your point. You said,
it's going to be 10 more minutes of rambling. I'm going to bring you back to this, but go ahead.
It's not rambling. Yeah. Don't say it's rambling because we're making an argument here. It is
rambling.
Okay. The argument is not that they control everything and they're so powerful. It's that they're extremely influential. They have a tribal loyalty. They use their influence to advance it. That's the thesis. So to say that when you say, well, why didn't they just do everything they wanted? Well, because I think that they don't have absolute control of our country. Thank God for that. It doesn't mean that they're not pushing for it. It doesn't mean that they're not achieving that to some extent. And they almost defeated Syria if it wasn't for the fact that Russia came in, if it wasn't for the fact that Trump came in. And actually, Trump ended our support for regime change in Syria. Is one of the first things he did in April 2017. And you know what they did a minute later? Chemical weapons attack. Amazing timing, literally. And I remember because it's when I started my show in April. Total
goalpost move, by the way.
No, it's not a total. Whoa, it's not a total goalpost move. Mm-hmm. We're explaining about how these power dynamics work. Trump comes in, and I think it was a Friday or a Saturday. Pompeo, the then Secretary of State, it was Rex Tillerson, Nikki Haley come out and say, we're no longer pursuing regime change against Assad. Meaning, in other words, the United States was pursuing regime change like you said they weren't. Literally 5 days later, that following Tuesday, boom, chemical weapons attack in Homs. Will the United States respond? The same thing happened in 2013. And this gets back to... Hang on. I promise I'm almost finished. Then this gets back to the Kurds. When they say, they're gassing their own people. They said the same thing about Syria in 2013 with Obama. They said the same thing in 2017 with Syria and Trump.
It's always the random names,
It's not random. It's not random. We're explaining how this stuff works rather than, the Gaddafi was a total freaking asshole and so was Assad. We're saying that there are competing interests here and there are political realities. They couldn't support another ground war in Syria after Iraq, after it was wildly unpopular, after they tried to do nation building. They fought a shadow war there anyway, and they tried to force 2 presidents to go to war. They tried to force Trump into a war. They tried to force Obama into a war in Syria. You're rubbing your face. Did that not happen? Was there no pressure to go into Syria?
Okay, so firstly, you lied about your thesis. You lied about no. If you want to go point by point, we can do that. But now you just rambled a whole bunch of dumb shit. So
no, but you're rubbing your face like that's not true.
Yeah, because everything you're saying is wrong.
So was there pressure for Obama and Trump to go into Syria with boots on the ground, 100,000 troops?
But we didn't do it, did we?
No, because they don't control everything. But there was.
They only control the most powerful nation in the world when they want to, but not when they don't want to.
They did it in 2003, and it became wildly unpopular.
I'm going to find out. You said the JQ, and I pointed this out at the beginning of the conversation because I want to make this known, and I'm going to reiterate. You just rephrased the JQ as some Jewish people of Jewish descent in the United States have loyalties to their home country or the home country of their families. That is not the JQ. The JQ does not say people whose parents come from Israel
you're telling me
in the United States. Yeah, well, because you're dancing about a very weak version of it. Because I agree with your version of it. I agree with your version of the JQ.
Okay, then we agree. Debate over.
We do. People who have Israeli parents probably like Israel. That's not a very compelling conspiracy, though. The real JQ is the idea that Jewish people in the United States government have an undue influence that can supersede or rewrite the will of the American people or other politicians in office to use the United States as a puppet for Israel. That's the JQ. The JQ is not. Can you acknowledge that, or do you think the JQ is just that some Jewish people in the United States like Israel?
Oh, hold on. So
there's like 20 other things.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
No, because if we're gonna go real JQ, what it was originally put out there by Hitler. What do we do with the Jewish people? They're a problem for society. We need to get rid of them.
And that's what he thinks the JQ is. The JQ is not just Jewish people.
It's 100 other countries.
But you gotta modernize it now. So that was the original JQ. Was like, what do we do with the Jewish people? That's where the Havara Agreement came in.
Well, yeah, but remember, he said Netanyahu wrote the document and then gave orders to the 4 Zionist Jewish people in the United States.
Well, I'm getting there. What we're saying now, he's arguing, right? So the JQ, that's what it originally was. But now it's more modernized now. What the JQ is nowadays is, do American Zionists who have dual allegiance to the United States and Israel, do they push Israeli interests before their own as American citizens, especially in U.S. government? He's saying that they do. They write foreign policy that influences American policy that benefits Israel, which puts the United States in compromising situations. He cited wars, etc., that weren't necessarily always in our best interest. And he's saying that they don't control everything, but they definitely have a very strong say in American foreign policy. That's what he's arguing.
And if there were wars that the United States is running into to its own detriment that it didn't have popular support for, that might be something I would agree with, right? However, Nick himself stated, why didn't we go into Syria? Because there wasn't the popular support. Wait. This is so important, okay? Because it's part of the conspiracy. He said, I asked, why didn't we go into Syria? Because he said that the Jewish people wanted us to get rid of Iran and they wanted us to get rid of Syria. But we didn't do that. Why? Because there wasn't popular support for it. But earlier, when I asked about popular support in the United States, he said the Jews controlled the media. What changed? There's always a reason why at some points the Jews are in control of what they need to be in control of to explain something. They control the media. That's why we went into Iraq. It was manufactured consent. Well, then why did we go into Syria and Iran afterwards? Well, I guess the Jews didn't control the media then. It doesn't make sense. Also, he brings this thing up about how Trump tried to end the war in Syria because ostensibly he's not bought off by the Jews, except Trump himself admittedly loves Israel, loves Jewish people, like every old person in the United States does. And Trump did one of the most unpopular moves worldwide and to Palestinians. He moved the fucking embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, a move that I think was only recognized by like 3 countries in the world because it was so unbelievably unpopular. So I don't know how you're going to sit here and tell me that Trump worked in defiance of Jewish control in the government while also being one of the biggest Israeli simps that the government has ever had.
Yeah, so let's take this piece by piece. First of all, without interruptions this time. So, and not rambling, I'm going to address all your points. So in the first place, I mean, you just got done saying, well, I agree with your version of the JQ. I'm arguing with some other JQ. I'm arguing with something else. If you want to talk about other things, we could get into other things. But I said my thesis
at the beginning. We'll cover the media next. The Jews controlling the media next.
But if you didn't listen, then that's fine.
Go ahead, Nick.
So I said that about the JQ at the beginning, and you're like, well, if you're saying that. And by the way, I love the throwing the head back. It's so adorable. And then the other thing, and then another interruption.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then the other thing is this. So then you throw out and say, well, wait a second. They brought us to war in Iraq, but they couldn't bring us to war in Syria? Yes, because the little thing called 9/11 happened in 2001. So there was widespread support, not just for a war against Afghanistan or Iraq, for a war on terror. People are calling for a holy war against Islam, a civilizational war. We go to war in Iraq under false pretenses, like we talked about. The people that created the Office of Special Plans, that manufactured the evidence for the war in Iraq, were all Jewish Zionists that wanted a war in Iraq for Israel. And by the way, all the people that pushed the evidence was the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu. It was also all the Jewish Zionists in the media, which you never seem to address either. You say, well, they control the media. I told you, 40 of the most influential publications published a letter on September 15th calling for that war. We go into the war on a false pretense, riding popular support that was based on 9/11 and the false pretense. The war's a disaster. There's high casualties. It goes on for a decade. It's wildly unpopular. And you say, oh, so, they control the media and the war machine sometimes, but not all the time. Yeah, they had more play after 9/11. They had more play when they manufactured the first line to Iraq. They didn't have as much play to get us into Syria. It doesn't mean they didn't use the same playbook. They did use the same playbook. They used a fake chemical weapons attack in 2013. They conducted shadow warfare against Syria in the same way, funded the so-called moderate Syrian opposition. They brought back ISIS, all these kinds of things. Just because Obama came in, and Obama was anti-war just like Trump in a certain respect, just because Obama balked and turned it over to Congress and Congress said no, doesn't mean the Jews don't control everything or they don't have influence or something. They exhausted the mandate they had from 9/11, and they also destroyed their credibility with the WMD lie. The same is true in 2017. So just because Iraq happened, 9/11 happened, to say that things are not the same today as they were then does not disprove the point that Jewish people have influence. What's more, and this is the last thing I want to say, because you actually said something revolutionary. You said that Jewish people have loyalty to Israel, and you said it like, duh, yeah, I fucking agree. But it turns out that's the definition of anti-Semitism. That's what got me in so much trouble from the beginning. I was a normal college conservative, and then I put out a tweet in 2016, and I said, if you have dual loyalty to Israel, right now? I said, if you have dual loyalty to Israel, I said, you're not an American patriot. And Ben Shapiro comes in and says, well, that's the definition of anti-Semitism. And I looked it up, and it is. That's the FBI, that's the State Department, that's the CIA's definition of anti-Semitism. So what you just said, if you say that Jews have more loyalty to Israel, I absolutely agree. That's the basis of the JQ. But earlier you said people do things. There's Asians that are programmers. There's Mexicans that are landscapers. Now you're saying Jews may have some loyalty to Israel. So, you can shift the goalpost, but you change your mind on that over the course of this talk.
Okay. Now, the next topic that we're going to talk about, as you guys know.
Oh, wait, can I just one important thing?
Really one important thing.
He won. Why did
you do that? Then I'll hit the next topic.
Why did Trump move the embassy to Jerusalem?
Because Sheldon Adelson paid him. By moving the embassy is a symbolic gesture.
Do you think
that's the same as a ground war in Syria? Honest question.
Is it the same as a ground war in Syria? No. Although Trump did bomb Syria, didn't he? Didn't Trump bomb Syria?
Yeah,
he did.
Yeah,
he bombed the airport, right?
Minuteman missiles.
Sure. So he did bomb the airport, and he moved the. So Trump is avowedly pro-Israel. Yeah. Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem, which, by the way, Jerusalem is one of the most important battles right now.
Regime change?
Jerusalem is one of the most important battles right now for Israel. Right, is gaining complete access over their literal fucking holy city.
Not
right?
Really.
No, that doesn't matter. You don't think most Jewish people don't give a fuck about Jerusalem?
Because it's not strategically important. What's strategically important is Lebanon and Iran.
Yeah.
Dipshit.
Oh, the two countries that we weren't able to invade as the United States.
The two countries that are pushing us to go to war all the time.
Why didn't we go to war with Lebanon over Iraq? If that's so much more important.
That is the plan. That's the plan.
Wait, why didn't we do that, though? It borders Israel. Why did we go to Lebanon over Iraq?
You want to know why?
Yeah, tell me.
You don't even know the answer.
I don't know. I want you to tell me.
You don't even know the answer because you're ignorant.
I know.
Because the real threat isn't Hezbollah.
Okay.
The threat is that there is a network that connects Hezbollah logistically to Iran through Syria. That's the problem.
Yeah, but that network wouldn't matter if Lebanon wasn't loyal to their interests.
It's not true because you'd just be moving the border north. The reason that Israel wants to take out Syria and Iran, you could look this up, it's because Hezbollah pushed them out, and Hezbollah wouldn't exist without the support of Iran and Syria.
Okay.
If you want to talk about geostrategy, that's the problem.
So the Jewish people want to take out Lebanon, Syria, Lebanon, Syria, and Iran. They want to take out those countries, and somehow these fucking retards got us go with Iraq? The only country they don't want us to take out? Good one. And they do it twice. They fuck up twice,
You know what's amazing?
2 times. And Gaddafi in Libya? You know where Libya is? You know what continent Libya is on? In fucking Africa. Why the fuck are we going down there?
Try to calm down. First of all, here's the amazing part. If you read the clean break memo, the first country they say to take out is Iraq. So that's why. You didn't know that because you never read it.
So we talked about the geopolitics.
Myron, that was a blitzkrieg. Yeah, I gotta say, best fucking hit follow and subscribe, nigga.
We got 95,000 people watching right now.
That's it. Come on,
everyone else is too scared to talk about this.
We need about 6 million in that chat.
So yeah, guys, share this with everybody. So now we're gonna get into the next topic here. Okay. Kanye West went on Drink Champs, and he mentioned that the Jews control the media, they control the banks, etc. Obviously, he got debanked right after.
Right.
Lost his billionaire status in a day, pretty much. Everyone, went crazy on him, saying that he's anti-Semitic or whatever for acknowledging that Jews have a disproportionate amount of influence in banks and media.
Hollywood as well.
And Hollywood. and people didn't like that.
So far, that Harley Pasternak threatened to take away his children and said that I'm going to send you to Zombieland to medicate him.
Okay.
So, and this again was he was a certain group of person, and all of Hollywood, they wanted to medicate him and control him.
Yeah, and Kanye West, I will say this, he brought this topic up to light, which is why people have been talking about this and were scared to talk, actually more likely scared to talk about it, because you know you can get canceled for talking about this shit.
Yeah.
And they can take away your family. That's the threat. Harley Pasternak also was the same person like speaking in Ellen Page's ear, and now Ellen Page is now Elliot Page. A lot of these Hollywood handlers, they give you this woke ideology instead of making you speak up. If they don't want you to speak about stuff like this, that's why everybody's extremely afraid to talk about it.
So I will say this. I will go ahead and turn it. Nick, do you want to kick this off with the media, Hollywood, etc., or if you want to just keep it direct with the media so we can stay focused, we can talk about that. Or does
I've got a good way to lead it off into that if you want to talk about that.
Lead it off,
please.
Real quick, yeah.
Was that a Roman? I thought I just saw Roman go up.
I'll show you a Roman.
All right, go.
Let's go fast.
Lead it off. Hey guys, do me a favor. Check all these guys out. All their links are below. Support Nick on cozy.tv/Nick. Support Destiny on YouTube. Support Zherka. Support Sneako.
Twitter.
Rumble.com/Sneako. And then check out the official John Zherka on everything else. So guys, support these guys. Like I said before, everyone else is way too scared to have this conversation. You ain't gonna catch content like this anywhere else.
And chat, after this one, if we don't go live for a week and you compare our content to what the fuck Ethan Klein shit you've been watching, you're going to be suicidal. Don't be suicidal, chat. Remember, you support us. We give you more gold like this. And Steven, I was just going to ask you, right? I was going to ask one question. Do you agree that all foreign wars, Democrats and Republicans both agree? Like, that's the one time they don't have any friction against each other. Isn't that kind of suspicious? Like, especially for Middle Eastern wars around Israel.
Not really. It probably shows that we only go to war when there's strong consensus in the United States about going to war.
Okay. Go ahead and
I just thought it was interesting about the media.
Yeah.
One thing that's really interesting is if you actually read that clean break memo, Syria is referenced first like multiple times over Iraq. So you just totally fucking made that up, which I thought was really funny.
Just Googled it on your phone, but you can read it.
Let's not digress, Destiny.
You just Googled it on his phone. He didn't read the full thing.
All right, take it. Did you want it to kick off with
No, you guys want to bring it up, but he totally fucking
Kanye said that the Jews control the media in Hollywood. You could go ahead and take. Do you agree? Disagree? Is it in certain components? Go ahead.
Sorry,
yeah. Well, I mean, look. I mean, the Kanye thing is just basically undisputable. I don't know how anybody could look at that and not see exactly what happened, which is simple cause and effect. He talked about the Jews, and then he got totally financially ruined, reputation destroyed, ruined in the media. And I was there in the war room with him as it was happening in November and December, and it was literally like could not find a fucking lawyer. Like he was being sued by Adidas. It was some civil thing. And I remember him like literally could not find a business lawyer to come and help him. This is a multi-billion-dollar deal.
Wow.
So I wanted to hear Destiny start off because I want to hear the rational Reddit explanation for that. You know, what happened with Kanye.
The rational explanation is if you attack Jews, if you attack LGBT people, if you attack minorities, you're probably going to get shit on in the United States.
Really?
That's not true. Zherka attacks Muslims and then he has to.
I fight them on the street.
He fights in the street.
3-on-1, bitch.
If you attack Christianity,
two of them, you fucking goat fucker.
If you attack Muslims, then you'll have physical altercations.
Isn't he literally permanently banned from Twitch?
Not for that. And
Not
hold
for
on,
that
hold
at
on.
all.
You're saying if I attack Mexicans, JP Morgan is gonna fucking float down from the fucking gates of Synagogue of Satan? Are you fucking joking
if
me?
you attack anybody, I don't think anybody will give a fuck because you're John Zherka.
Well, hold on. Explain to me this, since Ben Shapiro's little bitch ass is watching, huh? You little Turbo Zio bitch, fucking bitch, fuck you, fuck Media Matters. You're afraid of competition. This kid would have whooped your ass, you fucking boring fuck. But check this out, Ben. How come Ben can shit on my black African nigga community and talk about crime statistics for decades? But when Kanye brings up one Jewish question, JP Morgan and the whole world tries to cancel him. And what's funny is every single argument, when everyone stood up to attack Kanye, everyone's argument, they froze and it got very awkward. Piers Morgan, everyone, they didn't know what to say. The point that Kanye brought up was never answered.
Right.
They just punished him. What was the answer? What was Piers Morgan's answer? You don't remember because no one answered the fucking Jewish question. That's the point.
Because bringing it up is
Answer the JP Morgan thing. Answer the JP.
What was Kanye asking? What was the question?
If Ben Shapiro can attack black community and nothing happens, why did JP Morgan shut down for Kanye?
What do you mean if Ben Shapiro
he
can
asked
attack
one
the black
Jewish
community,
question and JP Morgan shut down $200 million?
Zherka, let him please
Ben
answer.
Shapiro
Sorry,
made
it's my
one
black
tweet.
side. I got low IQ and high testosterone. Sorry, it's a
Ben Shapiro made one tweet about what was it, like Arabs don't build anything, they just destroy.
Oh, he lost his bank for that?
And he didn't lose his bank for that, but he's been shut out or attacked for that for fucking 15 fucking years over that.
His career blew after that.
Let me just make sure I get this. Basically, what Nick is trying to say is that when other classes of people are criticized, they don't feel they don't experience the same level of debanking, cancellation, and I guess vitriol that you do if you criticize a certain country and a certain group of people. If you criticize blacks, if you criticize Hispanics, if you criticize Christians, white people, whatever,
I'm asking you honestly,
consequences.
Is there an example of somebody with a 10-figure net worth that has come out and shit on any minority group of people?
Mel Gibson.
Donald Trump.
Mel Gibson?
Yeah,
the guy whose entire career got fucking destroyed?
Exactly, but which community destroyed him, idiot?
No, but I'm asking you. I'm asking you. Let me listen, okay? I'm asking you.
Wait, what? You want that one? You want Mel Gibson too? This is like science, bro.
Hold on,
wait a second. Hold on. It's been a while. I'm sorry. Wasn't Mel Gibson canceled because he literally said the N-word in that phone call to that lady? Hold on. I know you guys are about to, but my understanding, didn't he leak that phone call where he told that it was his mistress or ex-wife?
He was talking about Jews.
And he was talking about the N-word, or was that just Jewish people?
Jews got mad because he said nigger.
Guys.
It's been a long time. I don't follow every single fucking
Let's be respectful to Destiny's viewpoint. Again, I'm just here moderating. I'm just simplifying it. All Nick is saying, right, and Kanye West said this as well, is that if you criticize other people, you're not going to deal with the same consequences. But if you criticize anyone that's a Zionist, Israel, Jew, anything like that, and say anything about, they're disproportionately represented in certain places, despite only representing 2% of the population, they're going to cancel you. That's all he's saying.
But my question is,
because I want to state it.
Wait, quick, because you can even Bible this. Are there any other billionaires that are shitting on minorities so that I can compare? Like, for instance, has Jeff Bezos come out and said, like, Mexicans run this shit, I don't like them, blah, 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 and nothing happened to him? Because my understanding is typically when you're worth that much, you don't usually attack many minorities.
You can respond.
Trump said we're going to ban all Muslims from America. He didn't lose Twitter. He didn't lose banking. He got the Republican nomination.
He said he's going to do it again, too.
Yeah. So there's one.
And he was forced to regulate relations with Saudi. Like, they still made him do something for their Jewish friends, Saudi.
Well, and let me say some more on this. So, in the conservative movement, it's well known, you can literally say fucking anything about Muslims. You can go in there. Glenn Beck he's not worth $1 billion. He's worth $250 million. He can go out there and write a book that says it is about Islam. And in the book, he argues that Islam is an evil religion and they all got to go from America. He's worth $250 million. Robert Spencer, not Richard, but Robert Spencer, he's a Jewish anti-Muslim guy. He could go out there and say similar things. Milo at one point, who's a Jew, could go out and say, I'm going to go and burn the Quran in Sweden during Pride Month or whatever the fuck it was 10 years ago. And he's got bank accounts. He's still got Jewish support. And same thing with Ben Shapiro. Shapiro literally called for a genocide. I'm not sure if you're even aware of that, but he wrote a column and said, transfer is not a dirty word. We need to ethnically cleanse Israel and get the Palestinians out.
Total faggot, by the way. Ben Shapiro, total faggot. Faggot in the chat for Ben.
And that was in addition. To saying that Arabs bomb shit and live in open sewage. He never faced any repercussions or penalties. It's of course only, and even Leafy. Leafy can go on Twitter and say LGBTQ people are evil and all the stuff that he didn't shout out Leafy. He's been doing a great job. He hasn't lost his Twitter. Elon personally told Ye he cannot come back to Twitter.
Yeah,
why the fuck do you think that is?
Nick's still banned on Twitter.
Do you think that if we look at so we can explain this with two ways. Either one, I guess because Jewish people are in control of who gets banned from all of these organizations, or two, can you not just look at where broad U.S. support is and realize that companies are probably doing things to keep broadly the United States citizens in line with their corporations? So if you were to ask, for instance, if you were to poll U.S. citizens, do you broadly support Muslims in the Middle East more, or do you support Israel and Jewish people more? Everybody over the age of 40 is literally an Israeli simp, Donald Trump included, as much as he seems to want to avoid that.
Wait, your original argument was you could get in trouble for any minority attack.
There are certain. I think that if you get on Twitter,
this is cheating. What he's doing, it's a waste of my time.
He's formulating his argument.
I think that if you get on Twitter, and I think if you shit on right now, I think if you do LGBT people, I think you're probably going to get a lot of trouble for it. I think that if you shit on,
you won't get banned.
Define trouble. No. We're talking about JP Morgan, bro. Stop saying
JP Morgan. My understanding is Kanye literally shit on the CEO of that company personally.
What? No. You think that's why he went down?
I think he literally shit on that company personally. Yeah, he shit on the CEO of that company personally.
So how come he can't get one fucking lawyer? But he shit on every fucking.
But what I'm saying is, also Kanye West is fucking insane. What I'm saying is literally, he's got fucking manic bipolar because everybody in the world I don't have manic bipolar.
You take Adderall and you're fucking.
I don't take any Adderall. Search my apartment and find a single fucking pill. When all of stimulants like yours, stop projecting.
We have to let him formulate his argument. He's giving a response for why people don't deal with the same consequences.
What I'm saying is that, if I'm trying to figure out like where is the repercussion on the American people, I can try to go by Jewish people that sometimes control the media and sometimes don't, or sometimes control the government, or sometimes don't, or sometimes push their interests, but they're not from Israel. Or I could say, what do the American people broadly support? I don't think America right now cares that much about people in the Middle East. So if you come out and you shit on brown people or people from the Middle East or Muslims, I don't think they care that much. Now, if you would have shit on Ukrainians, I think that probably would get you a lot of pushback right now. If you would have shit on Jewish people, for a lot of reasons, that probably would get you a lot of pushback right now. If you would have shit on black people, depending on how you do it, that probably get you a lot of pushback right now. But I don't think that it's just like the Jews.
Can I go?
Go ahead.
The reason why there's so much emotional baggage with that tribe is because of all the Hollywood movies on World War II depicting them as victims, but none about the people Stalin killed or any other dictator, Tojo's fucking Jap face. I'm telling you, you've never actually wondered why every World War II movie is from that point of view, that lens. Literally every Hollywood movie, me and Nick growing up were like, Inglourious Bastards, oh no, oh, this is the only tragedy in history. Nigga, I'm from a war. I'm a refugee, bro.
And you showed it in this debate. You insinuated a couple of times that I'm a Nazi, and you said that Nick is a Nazi. That's the most insensitive thing to call somebody. I said that Nick is a Nazi.
You literally started calling me far leftist. You don't even know what communist or socialist means. You said I was a communist.
Who trained you to spellcast to disparage someone with the word Nazi? Who trained that in you?
I don't think anybody at this table.
Which part of the media put that impulse in you?
I don't think anybody at this table is getting dispelled with the word Nazi.
Do you think a fat Chinese media outlet put that impulse in you to call him a Nazi? Where did you learn that behavior?
By listening to what he says about Jewish people in the United States.
But when you call someone a sexist, communist, faggot, whatever.
Do you think I do that a lot? Do I call people sexist?
Well, no, we get it from the external world. So media trained us. Why did they train you when you're losing an argument to put a mustache on him?
I called him a Nazi once at the beginning of the debate. None of this is about me just calling him a Nazi.
Why is it the most powerful word you can use?
It's not. The most powerful word right now is probably racist. I think, or transphobe. Those are the ones that were more shut up right now.
Do you hear what I'm trying to say or no?
What?
Like that you were trained by media.
You're saying that there's some manufactured consent because Jewish people run all the fucking media in the U.S., blah, 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 blah.
At 8 years old, you watch Inglourious Bastards, Schindler's List, and all that.
Do you think there might be a reason why the United States...
kosher bagel boy.
Do you think there might be a reason why the United States is more interested in like what happened on the Western Front than the Eastern Front?
Say it again.
Do you think there might be a reason why the United States is more interested in what happened on the Western Front rather than the Eastern Front?
How is this relevant?
I'm going to kill myself.
All right. How is that even relevant?
Let's go back
because you asked me, why are so many movies made about World War II from that perspective?
Okay, Destiny.
Yeah.
Can you explain, I guess, the disproportionate...
How about this, Steven?
Zherka, chill, man. You had a chance, bro. You had a chance. I got to keep this shit somewhat controlled and not too wild all over the place.
What, Rumble? Be wild.
Yeah, no, I know that, but... what I'm asking, Destiny, is do you have an explanation for the disproportionate level of punishment for criticizing anyone from Israel or Jewish people versus other races? That's what they're addressing.
My guess is for older people, broadly speaking, everybody old in this country loves Israel. That's just a fact of the matter. Like everybody over 40 is a massive fucking Israeli simp. Younger people have issues with the Palestinian stuff. More far right or far left people might have reasons for other reasons, right? But broadly speaking, even Nick would, I think, attest to this, that broadly speaking, Israel enjoys wide support from the United States, from Democrats and Republicans alike. So my guess is attacking that group of people is probably going to get you in more heat because you're dealing with people that actually vote, you're dealing with people that actually buy shit, and then you're dealing with people that are like running those companies, not just Jew people, but everybody that supports Israel. That's probably why it's not a good idea to attack that group of people.
I totally disagree. I mean, first of all, the left has been drifting more pro-Palestine as opposed to pro-Israel. So it's not everybody that loves Israel. And by the way, we're not even really strictly talking about Israel. We're talking about any conversation about Jews or Israel gets totally censored by big tech, gets totally censored and
why can you buy the book on Amazon?
Hang on, I'd let you finish. So let me jump in. You know, it's a fucking debate, dipshit. So I'm going to disagree, obviously. So when it comes to criticism of Jews or when it comes to criticism of Israel, it's not like this is something that's just happening. There are high pressure groups that exist like the ADL. When it happened to Kanye, it wasn't like Kanye said that and then collectively everyone got together and said, well, we like Jews more than we like Muslims, so that can't stand. The ADL came out there at the front like they always are. Anytime anyone says something remotely critical of Jews in Israel, and they wrote a letter to Adidas and said, you better fucking disavow. And the threat was this: if you don't, we're going to run a media campaign and say that Adidas supports Nazis. Don't buy their shoes. They've done this before. They did the same thing to Facebook in 2020.
Did you see the letter by chance? Did you actually see it? What they sent?
Yeah.
Kanye?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Did you see the one by JP Morgan?
It was public. The letter was public.
Because the JP Morgan letter was before.
Hey, let me finish.
He's explaining his stance.
Go ahead.
So,
and then the JP Morgan.
So the point is this. It's not that this censorship stuff just happens. Like, for example, people ask me all the time. There was just a girl over here on Friday. I said, oh, I'm banned from Twitter. She said, oh, but, they're reinstating people. Like, I don't know that. I know. And I told her, I said, yeah, I got reinstated for a day. Then I got immediately rebanned. I was one of 5 people on a list by the ADL that they said cannot come back to Twitter. And out of that 5, I'm 1 out of 2 that is, or 1 out of 3 actually, but 1 out of 2 that was not allowed to come back that talks about Jews. Andrew Tate got to come back, doesn't talk about Jews.
You did get to come back.
Donald Trump, and then got immediately rebanned, and all of my appeals got shut down.
Why'd you get rebanned?
They didn't tell me.
Because he called himself. When
did you tweet before you got banned?
He was
I
on a
tweeted
space
a
and he
video
said,
saying DEF CON 2.
And he was